My name is Willie Suttles Williams.
And my name is James Williams.
My name is Donald Anderson.
My name is Robert K. Hawkins.
Carl Wolf.
My name is Marie Ledford.
My name is Jerry Ledford.
My name is Robert Bruce Clifton.
Frank Dean.
My name is Stephen Robert Little, but I only go by Steve.
I was born in Spruce Pine, North Carolina, May the 8th, 1926.
And I was born in a little place in Old Fort called Westerman Town in December the 7th, 1925.
3/18/16. I was born in west central Ohio, about 30 miles due north of Dayton, Ohio, in a little community. It was an Amish community, although we were not Amish.
I was born May 23rd, 1926. I had a twin brother named Arnold Ray, and we lived in Dyersville, about 12 miles below Marion.
I was born in Nashville, Tennessee, October 25th, 1926.
Born in Raleigh, October 23rd, 1943.
I was born February the 25th, 1943 in Rutherfordton County.
And I was born January 16th, 1940 in Cleveland County.
I was born January 6, 1951 in Smithfield, North Carolina, back in the flatlands of the coastal plain, about 30 miles east of Raleigh.
I was born in Peoria, Illinois, and that's in central Illinois.
I was born 2 years before World War I ended. I don't remember it, but that's how long ago it has been. Dad rented a farm, and I was born on a farm at home without a doctor.
I was born at home. They had called a doctor and doctor come, but most people were born at home in those days. A lot of them was. And I remember my mother assisting after I got 7 or 8 years old. I remember someone having a baby in the neighborhood, and she went and helped when the doctor didn't come, you know. So those kids were born at home, and I think Marie was too.
I was. In the bed I sleep in now. Different mattress, but same bed frame.
Different sheets.
Yep, we changed sheets in the mattress.
We lived in a farmhouse. You know, back in those days, most farmhouses were two-story, and they were heated by what we called a base burner. And you usually had kindling to start the fire, throw a log on it, and after you got that going, then you'd throw coal on it. And that was your heating. And one of my brothers and I slept together in the bed upstairs. And we had no heat up there. So it was pretty rugged.
Electricity was not available. We didn't have any electricity until after the war. So we had to have lamps, oil lamp for light. And we had wood stoves. My mother cooked on wood stove. And then we had, of course, no running water. We either had to get water out of a spring, or a place or two we lived had a well.
We had no inside plumbing. You made the trip out the backyard. You had no toilet tissue. The old Sears and Roebuck catalog.
We had an outside restroom and had that for a number of years. Back in the 30s, I guess it was, the WPA went around and they had the cement base for these outhouses, and they placed it and built a little house around it. I think it charged you $5.
They had no plumbing. We got electricity when I was 5 years old. I remember watching them. I could take you right now and show you the pole that they put the transformer on when I was 5 years old, watching them put that thing up there. And this had to be when I was very young, because it was maybe before I started school. Once we got electricity and people got running water, they started talking about building in their back porch and putting a toilet, inside. And I thought, well, you know what a porta-john smells like out. Outside toilet's a lot worse than that. And I think, I'm gonna put that toilet in the house. I can't imagine that. I mean, where you eat and sleep and all that stuff.
We had an outside toilet too. I remember in the mill houses, they built little porches on to the houses and put the bathrooms in. But better than inside toilets was toilet tissue. I don't know if anybody's thought about it, but getting toilet paper was rough doing. We were very lucky because there was a little store in front of my grandmother, and she sold shoes. And there was a white tissue paper like in those shoes. So that was our toilet paper. But a lot of people use Sears and Roebuck's catalog, and it wasn't very sanitary. It just wasn't. But toilet tissue was a great invention, and we saw that in our time.
How my dad and mom raised 6 kids, I don't know, as I look back. That was Depression days. We had no money. We had no electronics. I'll take it back. We had a radio, but we couldn't afford 2 batteries. So when we wanted to use the radio, we had to go out and get the old Ford, the battery out of the old Ford truck and bring it in the house, hook the radio up. And that's the way we could listen to the outside world. I can also remember the shoe soles would wear out. We'd cut cardboard and put in there. Because, as I said, we had no money.
We usually lived on the farm. My dad did farming. It was a good life. We had a lot of love in our family, not a lot of money, but we never were hungry.
We lived on a farm, which was a blessing. We raised our own produce, our own meat, and Dad farmed it with horses. But back then, of course, you had no tractors. Usually, we kept 6 to 8 dairy cattle. We drank whole milk, but we had a cream separator. And we would, with a crank, we'd separate the cream from the milk. But on a Saturday night, we would take that cream into the little, what they call a creamery. And almost every little community had a creamery. And we would sell that cream to get money to buy the staples, like sugar, flour.
The way I grew up was called the third world country now. Everything's so primitive. Very few of the roads paved. The pavement, well, when I was real little, the road into town was gravel. But to find that paved, they just paved to the West Marion School out here. Everything we called the Glades, everything beyond that. The city system only owned one school bus. It was an old Chevrolet. And the fellow, we called him Jap Hall, drove it, and he picked up a load out in what we call the Glades and brought it to West Marion School. everybody got off the high school and elementary, and he went back and made another load. He came back at the end of that and put all the high school kids on and took them to town to school. And he worked in a shoe shop over there until 3 o'clock. And he got his bus and started back the same routine. You couldn't hardly walk on the main street there on Saturday, especially. People just crowded up. People going to Roseville's and hardware stores and different things like that. The farmers gathered in what's called the back lot back there with the blacksmith shop, and they came to get their horses and mule shod and apple sharpened, different things like that. Sold them pigs and traded cows and horses. It was a very busy place.
I can remember in Old Fort when everybody come to town on Saturday. Well, the street, I guess they call it Catawba Street now, it runs up and down through there, not the main, well, it is the main street, but one that sort of goes downhill. But all behind that, everybody drove their horses, and back of that, they tied them, all their wagons and horses, and that's where they're all tied up back there for a day. Everybody come to town on Saturday. Done all their shopping, and then for the rest of the week, that was just about it. They didn't bother to come to town. And the blacksmith had his little shop down at the end, and he took care of all the shoeing of the horses and little things like that.
My grandfather, this is on my dad's side, had a Ford dealership back in the 30s in Smithfield. And one of the neat stories that my dad used to tell me a lot, he's now deceased, but he used to tell me that when he went to college, he started off going to Mars Hill. Now, from Smithfield to Mars Hill, that is a long way in 1939 to get there. The normal way would have been by train, but the first trip, my granddad and my grandmother drove my dad. They could drive because they had the Ford dealership, and my granddad got one of the Ford cars that was for sale, and he picked one that had a radio. Now that was a big deal. Most cars did not have radios in them, but he picked a car that had a radio, and they drove. And this was the first day or two of September 1939 to drive my dad all the way across the state. Weren't that many roads, quite frankly, that were paved either in 1939. But they drove to Mars Hill, and one of the things that my dad said is all the way as they drove, it took all day to get there. When they would be in the Raleigh area or in the Greensboro area or the Charlotte broadcast area, they would hear the news on the radio, and the big story of the day was that Hitler had invaded Poland. And that just sort of brings world history right there in your face. As my dad was going to college, to hear the noise, the sounds, the anguish of people as Poland had been invaded, and the anxiety, not knowing what the future is going to hold. But what an incredible thing to hear the breaking news of Hitler invading Poland as they drove.
We were in church Sunday morning, and we had been through Sunday school and was in the auditorium, and the preacher was up, and these two servicemen came in, and this was an old church at that time. You come in the back door, and you had to walk all the way down the aisle to where the preacher was at. And they walked down and talked to the preacher, and he said, "We have just learned that we've been bombed, Pearl Harbor has been bombed, and all servicemen that are here need to report back to your stations." And we had, I'd say maybe 4 or 5 young men that was there for Christmas. And they all got up, and the preacher had them come down to the front, and he said prayer, and then they all walked out. And of course, everybody, tears were going. It was not a happy day. So the preacher dismissed, said everybody go home, be with your families. This is not going to be good. Well, everybody in the family had their ration book. My youngest brother must have been, maybe 6 years old. And every one of us had a ration book. And there was letters, A, B, C, on down. And each letter represented something, staples that you needed. There was sugar, lard, coffee, salt, all the staples that you could only have so much per month per family. So Mom and Dad would take out of each book to get what we needed at that time. Sugar, stuff like that was very, very scarce. Mom learned to do a lot of cooking, natural, with no sugar, salt. You could get a coffee called chicory, but you did it just like you did coffee. You boiled it, but it was not good. Daddy hated chicory, and he would be so happy when we would have stamps enough to get a 5-pound can of coffee. That, and we didn't drink it every meal either. We only had it for breakfast. The sugar in the coffees was the most, I think, that we used. Dad farmed, so we had our flour and our meal and meat, because, but the other things, but that was okay. Our boys.
You've heard tell of stupid and foolish kids. Well, I was one of them. Some guy with a dress blues on, he says, man, so I was looking at him over, and he said, how would you like to have one of these? I said, it looked pretty good. Get on that bus. Well, I didn't know what was going on. Next thing I know, I was in Paris Island, South Carolina. Turned around about 3 times. They run us through what they call a boot camp, which lasted about 3 or 4 weeks. Next thing I know, we're on a train and went into San Diego. So we got out and we put up some tents. 2 or 3 days later, here trucks were lined up. Loading them trucks, and we were put on a ship. And 17 days later, we were on Guadalcanal. Well, at that time, I was getting pretty close to 16. Actually, I got my notice that I hadn't reported. They were sending someone after me on Guadalcanal. I told the top sergeant, I said, got to go home. He said, what's your problem? I said, they're coming after me. He said, what? I showed him that, and I said, I didn't report for the draft. He said, and you just sit still, hang tight, because when they come, tell them to send 2 people because I'm going with you. And so that's the way it all started. I carried a Browning automatic rifle. The death gun, they called it. Because if the Japs were trying to, they wanted to pick out that gun. They wanted to get rid of it because it was so versatile. You could move with it and be firing 575 rounds a minute here and then over here and here. You could just be everywhere. It didn't weigh but 23 pounds, and you had one guy carrying think it was 200, I think I carried 100 rounds or 200 rounds, and I had another guy that would carry 250 rounds with him for that particular gun for me to shoot. And you can move it so fast and be in different places, all 2 or 3 places at one time. I was hit about 5 different times. They were trying me. That's what I said, when you carry that thing, you're an open target. They target you. It was early morning. It was somewhere in the neighborhood, I'd say 7:30 in the morning. And we had a Japs in the cave. And we had machine gun was set up here and machine gun set up here, cave over here. And I set this machine gun up because I knew where he was. And so I set this one on fire, and I told this guy to fire it till I got around there. So figuring he'd do it, I just sank it around the hill like I was going to church. Next thing you know, he quit. This guy didn't. The guy in the cave didn't, and he shot my legs out from under. I was taken to aid station, and they put me, took care, stopped the bleeding and stuff like that. Started blood going back into me. And it just so happened that the USS Solus, a hospital ship, was sitting outside. They put me in a Higgins boat and run me out there, and as they lifted me up on the deck as the ship was pulling out. And I got straight into a hospital then. I was put in for a Silver and Bronze Star, but it was deemed as in the line of duty. It had to be, at that time, it had to be done. I mean, we would have, if it hadn't have been done and taken care of and they'd run over us, anybody that didn't have blonde hair and blue eyes wouldn't have been here anymore, because Hitler was set out to get rid of the world.
I was drafted in the Army as soon as I turned 18. I was out of here, and so I went into the Army and into the infantry. I had a lazy eye, which I couldn't see very well out of my right eye, and still can't. But when we went up for their overseas examination, they pulled me and another fella out. He had something wrong with him too. And so I think that saved me, because the guys I trained with went, just little 18-year-olds went into the Battle of the Bulge. And many of them were killed. Anyway, this other fella and I were sent down to Clewiston, Florida, to a prisoner of war camp. And we were there until the war ended, guarding prisoners. It really wasn't all that bad. A lot of those prisoners, and they were these stormtroopers of Hitler's super race, big old tall fellers and strong. But they, not all of them, but most of them were there because we think that they didn't much believe in the war, and they didn't want to sacrifice themselves for that, and so they were very well behaved, and I could go out in the fields with 30 or 40 of them and by myself and not feel in danger.
I was 18 in October '44. I didn't go in service until 1st January. I had about, I think it was about 12 weeks basic training then. And then I went to Fort Rucker, Alabama for just a few days. And I should have suspected something then, because you gave them a machete chopping wild growth out of a swamp. But then went to Fort Meade, Maryland for a few days, and I thought, well, heading to Germany now. But stayed there just a few days and got on a train going to didn't know where it was going. Really got on the troop train and went to Fort Ord, San Francisco. They didn't tell you anything about where you were going then. Just they called your name if you're on the road. You got it, and went down to L.A. then in a few days and got on a ship. In 21 days, we pulled in Manila Harbor, and then we got on a little old train, and Manila was practically destroyed. It had been changed hands 2 or 3 times. You know, there's bombs, strafes. It was a wreck. Got on a little train and went up on northern Luzon, just south of Baguio City. They put me in the 6th Division, 6th 3rd Infantry. Well, I was ammunition sergeant for the 6th 3rd Infantry Regiment. And we stayed there a few months, and the war was over then, and we went to South Korea. I think it was 3 divisions went up there to occupy South Korea. The Russians got everything down to the 38th parallel. We got the southern side of it. When I came back from Korea, they put me in the 5th Division, trained troops up in Campbell, Kentucky. I wasn't there a short time, then I got out. It was a general disarmament at that time.
I was in the Signal Corps, and my job was, I was in the headquarters company, but keep in mind, I don't care what your position or what you did. When you got overseas, you were a soldier, number one. And sent us to Seattle, Washington, put us on the ship, boom, over to Hawaii, and then we started island hopping, picking up Armada, and went in for the invasion of Okinawa. We were assigned to the 10th Army for that invasion. When we invaded, we were attached to the 6th Marine Division. The 6th Marine Division went ahead of us, cleared out Yantan and Kadena airports. And it was our job then to establish and maintain communications between the 2 airports. And also there was a little island right off the coast of Okinawa. I can't remember the name of that island. We lost some of our troops there. They strung wire at treetops or dug, put in not posts, but cut a tree down and made a post. But anyway, they strung wire and they'd get picked off by sniper fire. And we also lost our commanding general of the 10th Army on Okinawa with sniper fire. General Bruckner from Okinawa. They sent us to Leyte in the Philippines. We started training for the invasion of Japan. And while we were training for the invasion, they dropped the big bomb at Hiroshima, and Japan surrendered. Soon after they surrendered, they loaded us and sent us to Sapporo. We started coming down sick, and we lost some of our people with tremendously high fever, and I got hit real hard, and I'm told, I cannot verify, I'm told that I had a temperature ranging up to 105.8.
Wow.
I lost weight. I was down to thin skin and bones, but anyway, I was down for a while, but thank God I made it. They treated us for malaria, and at that time they didn't know what it was. Later on they found out it was dengue fever.
World War II wasn't like it is now. You knew nothing. you heard no news. You didn't hear from the servicemen. You never knew where they were. I wrote to my cousins, and if you got a letter back from them, it would have pages with stuff cut out of it that they weren't allowed to write. But we didn't know anything. It's not like it is now. You know every bullet, everything that's going on, you know what it is. Then we knew nothing. We worked in a hosier mill and made socks to send to the troops. And my sister and I would put our name and address down in the toe of the socks. And we got a lot of letters back from the kids. And they were kids. They were all kids.
Everyone grew cotton in the 40s because the government, I guess, the military probably caused the cotton prices to raise, so it's what everyone grew.
When we were children, the children had Saturday morning cartoons, period. There was nothing. We might watch Lone Ranger or some 30-minute show through the week. You didn't watch television through the week. The parents did, but you didn't. It was geared more toward adults than children. Sunday night was a special night for us. We would come to Marion, and eat with Mom and Dad and hurry home because that was Walt Disney World. Come on, it was like a 2-hour show once a week. And it was a wonderful family thing. That was our family time, Sunday night to see Walt Disney.
I got a job delivering the Smithfield Herald. That was our local newspaper back in Smithfield. It was a 2-day-a-week paper, and I had a route that I would ride my bicycle and I would deliver the papers, rain or shine, didn't matter. We didn't have plastic bags. You just had to make sure you didn't get your paper wet. Your customer would not be happy. And then I would have to go collect about every 6 weeks or 2 months or something like that. And I carried around lots of pennies and nickels and dimes and quarters. Very few dollar bills. I forget what the paper cost, but this would have been in the early 60s to mid 60s when I was doing that. But having a paper route where I had to keep up with the money and turn in the money that I had to turn in, account for the papers, that was a good start into the business world. And having to have that dedication of knowing you had to be dependable. You couldn't be late with the paper. If you were, you'd hear about it, and I was never late with the paper.
My father was in the automobile business. He started out back in the early 40s. He did not go to the Second World War, but he would go up north and buy cars and bring them back and resell them. And then somewhere around the 1950 timeline, he bought a Buick dealership in Kings Mountain. I could assemble and disassemble a 4-barrel carburetor in something like 15 minutes. We had some mechanics that would take me under their arm and show me everything that about how to repair cars and how to repair transmissions and how to rebuild engines. Well, I decided that I didn't want to work in the dealership one summer, and I was 15 years of age at that time. And so I said, Dad, I want to work in the mill this summer. Well, Kings Mountain was big in the cotton mill business. And we had a friend who owned one of the mills, and so my dad was able to get me a age deferment so that I could work And that was a tremendous learning experience. I learned that I did not want to work in the cotton mill for the rest of my life. They were wonderful people, but it was a tough life.
The wonderful part about then and now was jobs. That's the main difference in our society is jobs. I could get 3 jobs any day. You know, we had knitting, double knit, sock mills. Hickory had all kinds of industries, and I ran them all. I tried all of them. But I could get a job anywhere, anytime, and it was nice.
There was only one school in Smithfield when I started, and it was grades 1 through 12, and it was all in one block. I was in the 7th grade when we got the news that President Kennedy had been shot, and that was a riveting moment when one of the moms of one of my classmates came into the room and told us we were having a class. I don't recall what the subject was we were talking about, but it just riveted everybody. Anybody who is in their 60s can tell you where they were when they heard about President Kennedy being shot. It was just such an unbelievably horrible moment to hear about.
I actually got drafted into the military during the Cuban Missile Crisis. And when I went in, they said, "What do you want to be? What do you want to do?" You know, you're talking about going on. What do you mean? You drafted me and I get a choice? No, you don't. But what would you like to do? I said, well, and I told them I liked things that was a little complicated or whatever, you know. I ended up in the Signal Corps. So I was able to copy Morse code. They give us like ABC or 3 letters, and they run it to us a few times. Then they went back and tested us, and I was able to copy that. So, and also I could type. I don't know if they knew that. It was radio teletype operator. I'd learned to type in school. A buddy and I decided to take a typing class in school because that's where all the girls was. You know, the boys didn't take typing. So I ended up working out in there as a radio teletype operator. But I ended up in Korea. I was in Korea when Kennedy got shot. I was on guard duty when Kennedy got shot. And they started bombing North Vietnam while I was in Korea. So I was a Vietnam war area.
I was drafted into the military from Pekin, Illinois, which is right next to Peoria. My draft number happened to be Lucky 13. And I was drafted. They took me to Chicago. I naturally passed the test, and I became drafted into the Army, of which I spent 1 year, 11 months, and 20 days, if you're counting. I went through NCO school while I was in the military, and that's to become a non-commissioned officer. And I became a sergeant before I went overseas to Vietnam. And I was a forward observer in the military, and also I worked with mortars. And so that's basically my fun time in Vietnam. Out of 30 people in our NCO school, 28 went to Germany, and another buddy of mine, we were lucky and we got to go to Vietnam, of which we both came back. Well, I was on what we call an ambush during monsoon season. And we were up by the Quan Tree up in the north part, and it just had little bitty trails, and we had the big 50-pound rucksacks on our backs, and so we was hunting for the Vietnamese or the North Vietnamese, and so we set up camp, and it's pouring down rain, and we set out our little claymores and ready to go. And we put this dead branch across the little pathway, and to move it, it'd shake, and you can go, shh, you hear it, So my buddy said, I'll take first watch. So I went to sleep, and we had one on, one off, and I just no more and got to sleep, and he wakes me up. Sergeant, there's something out there. I says, what? So I wake up and listen. I didn't hear anything. He says, well, go back to sleep. And I no more and got to sleep again, and here he wake me up. There's something out there. So we waited and listened. They still didn't hear nothing. So I says, why don't you just go to sleep and I'll take over from here, because I only had another 20 minutes or so. And so he no more and got to sleep. I hear the old branch go, shh. And I said, oh no, there's something out there. So I wake him up, And so then, but it sounded like after we woke each other up and we were wide awake here in the middle of the night, it sounded like somebody just picked the branch up and threw it off to the side. And we said, oh my gosh, somebody's coming through here. And we knew it wasn't our people, so we blew the claymores and threw a couple grenades and everything, but we wasn't going out there that night to check it out. So we got up the next morning and we killed a monkey. So that's the only thing I ever know that I really killed over there, because everything we did was mostly indirect fire over there.
Vietnam was raging, and I decided to volunteer to go in the Army. And so I went to Fort Knox, Kentucky, and at Fort Knox I went through my basic training, my advanced individual training, and my officer candidate school, and that was a 9-month window there on those 3. And so when I finished as a second lieutenant, I was then reassigned to Fort Polk, Louisiana, which no one ever wanted to go to Fort Polk. I mean, that was just where you didn't want to go. Well, I injured 2 vertebrae in my neck. I had drawn orders for Vietnam and injured them while I was on leave, which set me back significantly. It's so much so that they pulled me off orders. And then I wound up spending the remaining time on active duty there at Fort Polk.
I can remember sitting out on the porch with my daddy's family, when they would sit. I love to hear them sit and talk about things they did or fights they got in or different. It was wonderful hearing that, how they grew up. I don't think people listen anymore. They're too busy.
I find, in my own opinion, is people are more opinionated now than they were back then. And some people are losing track of the family life, I believe. And so everybody's too busy in their own little world.
When I grew up, life was so simple. You didn't have all of these ancillary things pulling at your time. We're supposed to be in a society today where we have instant communications with one another, but yet we don't communicate.
So many things come back to communication. I really think that every problem, individuals, even businesses and governments, everyone, if you trace it back to its origin, will lead to poor communication, a failure to communicate. Well, the failure to communicate can be life disrupting.
And when I was young, the president of your country, you would never call him by his first name. He was the president of the United States of America, and he was very respectful of that. I don't care if you liked him or if he was a Democrat or Republican. You were respectful of that. There doesn't seem to be the respect that we used to have, and I miss that. I think that was important, and I don't know how we'll get it back.
As you get to the backside of life, and you look back of those things that are really important to you, and it all comes back down to your values, not only in regards to your family, but also in regards to your religion, also in regards to how you want to be remembered when you go downrange. My favorite quotation of all times is from Winston Churchill, and his his quote is, "You make a living by what you get. You make a life by what you give." I can sit before you today and say I'm one of the richest people in the world. But now, what a lot of people don't understand is there is a difference between wealth and riches. Wealth is your portfolio. Well, I'm not a wealthy man, but I'm a very rich man because of my relationships, not only with my family, but all around the world, of people that I've been able to meet that have broadened my life tremendously.